Well, I didn't expect you guys to come here so quickly, but anyway, this is the second part to my last video. If you haven't seen it, go check it out and prepare to be triggered, because that video has some good hot takes. This video is going to be talking about my personal favorite Pixar films. Now let's jump in. This movie is easily the best one out of the Cars trilogy. Should I really consider Cars 2 canon to the Cars franchise? Whatever, it's Cars, who cares? The reason why I find this movie to be a better setup than the previous two Cars films is because, number one, we don't spend that much time in Radiator Springs, and number two, there's no spy bullshit in this one. Instead, we focus on what the franchise was all about. Well, besides being a marketing stunt. It's all about cars racing. And I think NASCAR fans will have a better time with this movie over the previous two. Seeing Lightning being treated as an old man is a little weird considering the fact that he doesn't look any different compared to how he looked in the previous two films, but again, who cares? It's Cars. This movie does a good job of paying respects to the first Cars film as well as Doc Hudson as a character. You even get to see old characters come back like Chick and the King. And it teaches a nice lesson of accepting one's age, because we see Lightning give away his last race to Cruz, a rookie who never got her shot in the spotlight. And at the end of the film, she races for Dynaco, and not to mention, Lightning is her mentor. So yeah, I think this is a great Cars film. But the question is it a great Pixar film? Yeah, no. Even at Cars' best, it still doesn't match up to Pixar's previous works, but I will give it credit that it ended on a solid note. This is one of the most mature Pixar films I've ever seen. I mean, there's one that beats it, but we'll get to that later. I think the theme in this one is pretty great, and it's pretty relatable too, especially with its ending. Spoiler alert, so Joe finally does the gig, and after he does it, he doesn't really feel any sense of accomplishment. And this is something that he claims that his whole life was building up to. And it didn't really hit the expectations he set. And that aspect is pretty relatable to some of, if not most of us. I'm not gonna lie, I empathize with Joe here, because this is the exact same mentality I had when I started my YouTube channel a few years ago. When I was 14, I had this dumb mindset that once I made my YouTube channel and became a full-time YouTuber, it would be so fulfilling. But realistically speaking, it's pretty life-draining. It should be fun like it was before, but nowadays it's just tiring, stressful, and beyond unbearable, and it leaves me feeling burned out every single time. It makes me feel like this is less of a hobby and more of a job. And that's not to say I don't like doing YouTube, it's just, it has a bad impact on my mental state. I'm sorry guys, I got a little bit off topic there. Back onto the movie. I think the animation in this one is pretty outstanding, especially when you see the teaser for the first time, you think it's realistic. But then you factor in the human designs and you're like, oh yeah, this is Pixar, but goddamn, this looks good. Especially when you go into the Soul world. The character development is pretty solid, 22 and Joe are pretty likable, the music is pretty nice to listen to. Terry is a pretty enjoyable antagonist, like this character is just so awesome. And not to mention their theme song is just, my compliments are to the chef. The ending where Joe is playing on his piano is beautifully well done, and overall I think it's one of Pixar's best. Sure, it does have some problems, like the story can be kind of predictable, and this Pixar film, I don't think it's really meant for kids. I mean, they can like it fine, but they're not really going to get all the philosophical themes that the adults can get. And not to mention, they set up these rules in the Soul world, but they don't really follow those rules most of the time, but whatever, I guess. Honestly, with all that aside, I still think this movie is pretty good. You guys should definitely give it a watch.
Hey, look, the golden...
Huh, funny. I put the first Toy Story movie on the worst list, and I put this movie on the best list. The reason why this surprises me is because at first glance, the story of Inside Out does remind me a lot of the first Toy Story movie. You have the main character who's currently butting heads with the other main character that they don't like or understand, but after some hijinks, they both get lost and or separated from their group. So this results in the two trying to find their way home, and while they're on the journey, the main character starts to grow a liking to the other main character over the course of the movie. Yeah, it's basically the same thing, only with a few minor tweaks here and there. But even with that, Inside Out is pretty goddamn good. I like the creativity and imagination that went into Riley's mind. The animation is fun and playful, and the characters are likable, even though realistically they're pretty one-dimensional. I think Bing Bong was pretty funny, and not to mention his sacrifice at the end was pretty emotional. And what made me pick Inside Out over Toy Story is because Joy is a much better protagonist. Yeah, she kind of goes through a similar arc that Woody went through, but at least with her, she's pretty enjoyable for the most part. And throughout the movie, I wouldn't say she's vindictive or petty to sadness. So yeah, Inside Out is pretty good. It's not outstanding, but it's pretty good where it stands.
Sometimes.
Wow, I did not expect Coco to be this damn great. It does a great job of embracing everything from Mexican culture. The music is fantastic, the characters are endearing, the world is pretty and unique, even though at times it reminded me a lot of the Book of Life. And I will admit, I did feel a little bit teary-eyed at the ending. And I gotta say, the animation in this one is pretty goddamn strong. But this movie does have some problems. It's not really that funny, the pacing's a little slow, and you have the typical twist villain, which he's not that bad in here. But honestly, those are moot points, because this movie is so well put together that I think it is without a doubt the best film of the 2010 decade. Yes, I find this movie better than Inside Out and Soul. Hell, this movie was so successful that Disney themselves tried to copy it with Encanto. And it had rather mixed results. But hey, We Don't Talk About Bruno is a pretty good song. This movie is the perfect send-off to the Toy Story trilogy. I think the story is at its absolute best here. Seeing the toys trying to decide on what to do with their lives since Andy is growing up and now he's going to college, so this leaves them to go to daycare, which ends up being a terrible move because the toy running the joint, i.e. Lotso, is a control freak who wants all the big kids to himself because his owner replaced him a few years ago. So this results in them trying to break out. This is definitely the darkest one out of the trilogy. The animation in this one is filled with dark colors to truly emphasize how the system at Sunnyside Daycare has been truly corrupted by Lotso. Speaking of which, I think Lotso's a pretty good antagonist. And I also think some of the old characters were fine. Not great, but I thought they were fine in this movie. And the ending, it is truly the greatest way to end a trilogy. It ends with Andy giving his toys away. Hell, he even gives Woody away to Bonnie. Even though that's a pretty terrible idea in hindsight. But hey, it happened because Toy Story 4 exists, so yeah, we gotta deal with that shit now. But still, the ending is pretty bittersweet. Okay, time to bitch and complain now. I really didn't like the toys not believing Woody when he told them that Andy was going to put them in the attic. It feels like a major step backwards for their characters. It does borrow some elements from the first movie, more specifically the escape route. The daycare sequence was kind of uncomfortable even though it served a purpose. This movie isn't all that funny. I mean, the Spanish Buzz part was funny, but there wasn't really that many chuckle-worthy moments in here. I mean, I get it, it's the darkest one in the trilogy, but I feel like there should be an equal balance of dark moments mixed with some good humor. But even with that, I think this is a really good send-off to the Toy Story trilogy. Yeah, we're ignoring Toy Story 4. Fuck that piece of shit.
Is there nothing he cannot do?
This is a movie that is very divisive among audiences. Some people say that this movie is a straight-up masterpiece, while other people say that its first couple of minutes are the best part and everything else is just mediocre. And I kind of fall in line with the mediocre opinion. Look, be grateful I didn't put it on the worst list. And that's not to say that everything about this movie is bad, because it definitely isn't. The first couple of minutes are pretty strong, and I thought the third act was pretty cool. Seeing Carl fight his childhood hero was pretty awesome. Seeing Doug become the alpha dog among his pack was pretty cool as well. And the ending of the movie was pretty heartwarming, with Carl going to Russell's award ceremony and awarding him the highest honor, the Ellie badge. Damn, that really made me cry. Jesus Christ, this God, when this movie punches hard, it really punches hard. And the message of spending time with your loved ones and cherishing every single moment with them, even the boring ones, is a pretty good message. And I'm not gonna lie, this movie makes me sad, because the voice actor of Carl passed away, so whenever I hear his voice, it just makes me feel gloom.
Sorry, Up. You made me feel down. Da bad joke!
Yeah, there are some good things about this movie. It just kinda sucks that there are some things weighing it down. Get it? Because it's Up.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I'm sorry. For one, Carl is a little too cranky for my taste. Russell and Doug can kind of get annoying at points, but to be honest, I prefer Doug over Russell any day of the week. And again, the middle portion of the movie is pretty weaker compared to the first and third act. But it's still a pretty good movie, and I'm glad that I put it on the list because the emotion really does hit hard. Finding Nemo is pretty good. That's right, it's pretty good. I think Marlin goes through a good character arc. Dory is pretty okay, I guess. Nemo is pretty good. The different characters they interact with over the course of their journey are memorable and hilarious. Hell, even the tank guys are pretty funny. The animation looks surprisingly good today. Usually animation in the late 2000s don't age well, but this one, it looks pretty goddamn good. The humans look scary, but who cares about that? They don't get shown that much. I wouldn't go as far as saying that it's a film that really sticks with me, but I wouldn't mind watching it on TV if it's on. It's a pretty good family film that anybody can watch. This is the funniest Pixar film out of the bunch. Mike and Sully are without a doubt the best duo characters Pixar has ever introduced. The gags in this one hit every single time, the world is pretty original and creative, and it has two villains that actually work. And guess what? One of them is a twist villain. Jesus, if anyone's good at pulling off twist villains, it's Pixar. Well, not all the time. The only real issue I have is that Boo is not really that much of a character, but she's inoffensive, so I'll let her be. And I feel like we should have explored the world of Monstropolis a little bit more than just hanging out in Monsters, Inc. Which I get that's the name of the movie, but I don't know, a little bit of more exploration around the world would have been interesting, rather than just hanging out in the corporation for like 90% of the runtime. But other than those 2 points, this movie is great. It's funny, the characters are likable, the final climax is awesome, and if they decide to pick this up for a sequel later down the line, I wouldn't be mad at it. In fact, I would be kind of interested. Just ignore everything from Monsters at Work and you're golden. The Incredibles is pretty incredible. I love the characters, I love the story, the villain is outstanding, the action is top notch, and not to mention, it's a perfect satire of superhero tropes. Something that the second film clearly forgot. I think the way it deals with its themes is pretty spectacular. This is another Pixar film that feels a little bit too mature for its own good, kind of like with Soul. We have Bob dealing with a midlife crisis between trying to live a normal life with his family and trying to go back to relive his glory days, which is something that I find pretty relatable and beyond pretty interesting. But this movie does have some issues. I will admit that the family outside of Helen, I guess, kind of feels sidelined in this movie, to the point where I'm wondering why is it even called The Incredibles if we're focusing more on Bob? I guess that's the one pro I can give The Incredibles 2. We actually focused a little bit more on the family in that movie. And yeah, the animation certainly hasn't aged well. Why am I praising The Incredibles 2 now? Son of a bitch. But you know what? I could care less about that because this movie's strengths are so strong that it makes the cons look almost insignificant. So yeah, this certainly is incredible. A sequel that actually builds on the original and is not a cash grab? No way. Yeah, Toy Story 2 is pretty great. The story in this one is really great. We find out more about Woody's background, and it shows that he's actually a valuable collector's item. We get introduced to new characters, we have a twist villain that actually works, and we have a side plot that focuses on Buzz and the other toys trying to save Woody, which is a major step up compared to the first movie. And there are some emotional moments in here that actually work. And this is a movie that solidifies, in a toy's point of view, that life is only worth living if you're being loved by a kid. And honestly, it works so well here. And you know what? After watching this movie, this made me hate Toy Story 4 even more. So thank you for that, Pixar. So yeah, this movie, I don't really have much problems with it. It's just, without a doubt, the greatest sequel Pixar has ever made to date. This is a movie I would watch all the time as a kid. And recently I watched Shay Frillis's hour-long movie talking about how much of a magnum opus this movie is. And you know what? I can definitely see why. This movie is a goddamn masterpiece. The city of Paris and the food from Paris is completely faithful to the real life thing. The colors and animation in this one is absolutely outstanding. The characters are well written in this movie, heroes and antagonists alike. The music is great. I wish I would play some of the music in the background, but Content ID is a real bitch. And not to mention, it gives a powerful message about being a critic and an artist. And that's why this movie means so much to me, because it taught me as a kid, it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, anybody can make a splash in this world. And if there's something that you're passionate about and you want to show it, don't be afraid to put it on display. Pixar, if you plan on doing sequels in the next couple of years, please do not make a sequel to this. This is a movie that is a perfect standalone film. It has good characters, it has a wonderful message that can speak to a lot of people. It has some of the best scenes in animation history, and overall, it's an entertaining ride that'll keep you engaged all the way through. Now, by the way I'm talking about this film, you're thinking, hey, this is my favorite Pixar film. And no, it's my second favorite. There's still one more movie that tops this one. And that movie is... Yep, this is my personal favorite Pixar film, and I don't give a shit what anyone thinks. WALL-E is without a doubt the best Pixar film I've seen as a kid and as an adult. And sure, it doesn't really push the envelope like The Incredibles or Toy Story 2 or even Ratatouille, but it is still something that holds a special place in my heart. The animation in this one looks very good, especially for a 2008 film. And I thought the way they managed to tell a romance story with two robots that can barely speak at all, it just astonishes me. And unlike other films on this list, I love this movie because it does one thing that most of these other films don't really do. Let the animation tell the story. You're forced to ask questions like, how did this world become a piece of garbage? How did these other Wall-Es die out? And numerous other questions. And the second Eve arrives, oh my god, the second they start bonding, it is the most adorable fucking thing I have ever seen in my goddamn life. That's right, I said it. You can take your Vi and Caitlin, you can take your Luce and Amity, and you can take your Midoriya and Uraraka, and numerous other relationships you can throw at me, and you can fucking shove it. Because this relationship is 10 times more adorable than any other relationship you can throw at me. I feel like I need to make this clear that this was just a joke, okay? Relax, don't get the knife or gun, just calm down, it was just a joke, okay? Chill. But I will admit that once we get to the Axiom, the movie's a little weaker, but I still think it's pretty great. The only real negative I have with this is that I feel like they should have made Otto more three-dimensional like Wall-E or Eve. Instead of just following his objectives, he should have his own reasons as to why humans should stay on the Axiom and not go back to Earth. But I guess not. But aside from that, I think everything about this movie is absolutely spectacular, and I consider it, without a doubt, my favorite Pixar film. So yeah, that is my personal list. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you do, tell me what you guys think. What are your favorite Pixar films? Tell me in the comments section below. Now, if you don't mind, I will be gone for a couple days to work on the regular show video for you guys. Peace out.